Well, I'm here this morning with my very dear friend, Daniel Guerrero.
Very nice.
There we go.
You got
So,
it.
I won't tell you guys how many times it took me to say that. Daniel is first of all, he's a great person. He's been in public life for quite a while over his career. He spent a lot of time working in nonprofits.
Yeah.
And now one of the things that he is best at, I'd say, in this whole Central Texas region is figuring out how to help navigate the tricky waters of public affairs, things along those lines. Would you say that that's an accurate description?
That's a very accurate description. I think my boss typically says that we connect dots. And so it's like, at times, whether it's in public service or government or, any different parts of industry, you have an array of dots that are spread out across in folks that are wanting to be able to try to find a way to maneuver and connect with each. And so that's the role that I try to play. And my mom says I'm a matchmaker. And so the description that you described is perfect.
Well, I think you're so two things. Those dots in my mind are oftentimes people. At least they have been in my experience. I mean, you've been so instrumental at times connecting me with people who are useful to me and then vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of bridging connections between people with your extensive network. And on top of that, too, I think it's also connecting ideas sometimes, right? You hear someone who's like, hey, I've got this ability or this kind of interest, and I think that would mesh really well with somebody else. And I think that's an excellent place to be in the world. I remember, just to kind of quote scripture a little bit, one of my favorite religious texts said something along the lines of there being a special place in heaven for people who bring other people together.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that. I think it's one of the most valuable assets one can have. Now, one of the low-key but most interesting parts about you, Daniel, is you are the proud father of turtles.
Tortoises.
Tortoises?
Yes.
Now look at me already. My notes are wrong. Can you tell us about your tortoises?
Well, I'm not going to get into the finer aspects of tortoises versus turtles because it does get complicated. But yes, I have 3 tortoises, one of which is famous. In fact, Diego, my most famous tortoise, I've had him now for 6 years and 2 days. I think as of Saturday, he came into my world 2020. And so yeah, 6 years. But Diego is a 25-pound yellow-footed tortoise from South America. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. And then I've got a smaller one named Chiquito, and he is a leopard tortoise. He's about 5 pounds. He's a little bit more tame, kind of shy, a little antisocial, if you will. And then I've got a little girl, and she used to be tiny, and now she's about the size of a nice-sized hamburger. And her name is Po, or Poquita.
Aww.
And she is a sulcata. Now, here's the wild thing about her. Diego, like I said, 25 pounds. He's not going to grow any bigger than that. He's full grown. Chiquito's about 5 pounds, about that big. He's not going to grow any bigger than that. Poe will eventually be probably about the size of this table.
Oh, what?
Yeah, she will be giant. She will weigh well over 200 pounds, and all 3 of them will live to be over 100. So
where are you going to keep them?
Well, there will come a point in time where it's not going to be my problem because I'll be long gone. But my goal they are what you refer to as heirloom pets. And so I need to will them. And so I'm always looking to make friends that might be thinking about having children a little later in life, because there was a point in time where I had a friend of mine that his daughter was interested in eventually adopting my larger tortoise. Well, now she is, I think, probably 14, and that time has passed. So her interest in being the mom to a 25-pound tortoise has dipped. So I've got to find infants that might be interested in adopting my tortoise a little later.
100%. So how did you celebrate that anniversary a couple of days ago?
So he definitely got a little extra helping of some strawberries and some romaine lettuce, some extra time. It was actually a decent afternoon, so we got to spend some time outside before it started getting cold. And that's one of the hardships of owning tortoises in Central Texas is that, during the summer, he loves it. It's nice and warm. It's good to go. But during the winters, if it gets below, it's below about 55 degrees, I got to bring him inside. So, so yeah, my big one eventually, I've got to figure some things out. But I've got a little time.
I always thought that was such a, you sent me a picture the other day. I was like, what on earth is this? But I think that's also a part of you I really enjoy. You're multifaceted.
Yeah.
You have all these different areas where you have a wide and deep interest in the same way. I'll say, as you recall, my intro question bounced between that and you giving a elevator pitch on why people should learn how to scuba dive.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to give me an elevator pitch?
do.
All right, let's hear it.
So the irony of my scuba experience is I learned to scuba at the beginning of COVID.
Right.
Because I needed to find something to do and was still going to keep me distanced, but was going to be creative and something I hadn't done before.
Right.
And I was like, what better than to have your own breathing apparatus that you could clean before and after, and you were going to be underwater, a somewhat distance from people and learning a new skill. And so that's what I did. And so did it in San Marcos at a little scuba shop there off of Ranch Road 12, and loved it, loved the experience, but then immediately got spoiled. My first diving trip was to Cabo San Lucas.
Oh.
And so
Didn't bring me with them either.
not Cabo, Cancun, but still just the same. But went out to Cancun, went out scuba diving, went into some cenotes, went into the ocean. And then I get back home, and it's like everywhere I want to go scuba diving, I can see maybe 3 or 4 feet in front of me, and the water's typically either really cold or not all that deep. Right. And so, I've enjoyed scuba. I think I overdid it on the buying of all the accessories and things to make it fun for me, and then really haven't gone as frequently as I like to. One of my next goals, though, from a scuba standpoint, is I do have a friend that is constantly like, hey, we're gonna go diving with great whites. You want to go? And I kind of do, and at the same time, I have friends who are like, no, dude, don't do it because it's just messy and stinky. And so, but at the same time, they're not so worried about the sharks as much as what they use to attract the sharks and how that the chum, you're getting in the water with it, right. And so that fragrance kind of lingers with you for a while. And so, the pictures look cool. Right. But I mean, I think it takes a while to kind of like wash some of that stuff off. And so I haven't done it. I'm not sure I ever will. But one of the greatest experiences kind of blending those two passions together was when I was diving in Cancun. I remember kind of gliding by a sea turtle that was eating. One of the most remarkable experiences of my life to see that creature just there on the bottom of the ocean, and would love to do that again.
Well, and to kind of pivot a little bit, and one thing, and because you talked about San Marcos a little bit there, and one of the shops you've patronized at one point in time, tell me a little bit more about your history with San Mo.
Well, for me, it's San Marcos. I mean, I hear San Mo, and I hear it regularly, and I think that's definitely kind of that new terminology, new trend. We've gone through so many different branding iterations of what my hometown is, whether it's the 78666, hitting the square, floating the river, all those aspects that make San Marcos culture wonderful. Right. But it's home. It's my hometown. Love San Marcos. And so I think it's interesting. I've shared with you before that when I was growing up, you would go to different parts of Texas and you'd mention, oh, I'm from San Marcos. And they'd be like, oh, you're the place with the outlet mall. And it's like, well, there's a lot more to us than that. And now I travel all over the world. I've been to London. I've been to, to New Delhi. I've been to Mexico City. I've been to a province in China where I was sitting with an elected official from China, and they're, mentioned, I'm from San Marcos, Texas. And they're like, oh, that's where Texas State University is at. That's where y'all have a beautiful river, right? Absolutely. That's where LBJ went to school. And so suddenly it's like, y'all used to know us because of our outlet malls, which, hey, we're grateful. But to know now that San Marcos is known for its history, its natural beauty, its institutional assets. The fact that we're the longest inhabited, place on the face of the earth. There are artifacts and proof of life that exist along the banks of the river that have not been found anywhere else, that have been dated later than any other artifact located on the planet. It's just remarkable.
So for you, what do you think made San Marcos so special?
Thank you for
How about that pronunciation?
The mixture of culture, I think, is a big part. Just the indigenous nature of our community. The focus on understanding that, San Marcos was founded for a lot of different reasons, not just the current iteration of the community, but the location, because the river itself is headwatered right there in San Marcos through the Edwards Aquifer. So that natural development of a core element of life, pouring up from the ground, right, and stimulating that entire ecosystem is just a remarkable story in itself. And to create that natural beauty that then blends into this, curation of culture, of economics, of education, that pours all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, it's just a remarkable story. And to be situated in between Austin and San Antonio is nice as well, because you still have, the big metropolitan aspects to the north and south. And yes, we are seeing a blending of those two metropolitan communities kind of pouring in, and it comes with, plenty of hardships and plenty of things that have to be addressed and discussed. And I think San Marcos has much more of a seat at the table than we did decades ago. And that's not anything due to me or folks that are in place now. We're certainly playing a role in that, but that's because of the leadership and the voices and the consistency of people for decades that have said, hey, don't forget, we're here too. So while folks in Austin and San Antonio were fighting for transportation dollars, healthcare dollars, public safety dollars, education dollars, San Marcos has been a part of that as well. And it's gaining more of that voice and that influence and saying, hey, we also want to play a role. We're not saying we need everything for ourselves, but we're wanting to play a role to ensure that all of our neighbors are taken care of as the whole region continues to kind of evolve into what we're going to be seeing over these next few decades.
Well, building off of that, San Marcos is obviously a powerful hub between Austin and San Antonio, but Hays County in general has so many other interesting communities right there in that area as well. And then, of course, we have Kyle and all of these different cities that are growing and really becoming super serious and interesting, and they have their own identities and their own community basis. For you, I guess, what would you say, if you were to look into the future a little bit for Hays County, what do you see going on?
Well, one, let me compliment you on the rolling of your R's.
Thank you,
I thought that was remarkable.
I appreciate that.
The other thing I will say is that you referred to some of the surrounding communities in Hays County as becoming. They've always been. They've always been very powerful. When you look at Kyle, when you look at Buda, I'll throw my friends from Wimberley and their growth that they've seen. You think of Buda and Kyle initially because they're immediately adjacent to the Austin area, but Wimberley, is just and I don't want to say Wimberley has always kind of been a little bit more slower on the growth intentionally because they want to maintain that small town aesthetic, which I value and appreciate. But there's just this sense of we know who we want to be, we know who we are, and we know who we don't want other communities to force us to become. And so I think Buda and Kyle have also been that same pace as well, and kind of acknowledging, we're on I-35. So we know we're going to see a greater rate and approach on growth than perhaps our friends in Wimberley or even in Driftwood or Dripping Springs.
Right.
And so we want to acknowledge that, but we still want to maintain who we are and maintain our character, maintain, our heritage. But also we want a piece of that pie as well.
Right.
We don't want it all to just be gobbled up by our neighbors to the north.
Right.
And so you've seen Buda, especially, and Kyle really begin to kind of stake claim to, this is who we are. These are the plans that we have in our growth, in our character, what we want to plan out for the future so that we can be mindful as far as, what the cost of this growth is going to be, both financially and environmentally, and also think about what those consequences are. And so I think they've taken really good approaches, lots of great leadership along the way. Many of my friends have served in leadership capacities and roles throughout, Kyle especially.
Right.
But to see Buda and the approaches that Buda has taken and really fine tuning and understanding, hey, this is what we want to showcase, and,
Right.
and we want to make sure. I know my friend Jennifer Storm there in economic development.
Oh,
She's
really?
doing such a great job,
Yeah.
and just saying, yes, these are our assets. This is what we're doing well, and we want people to see it. But we also know that we need to start thinking about, those hardships that we want to start addressing now, so we're not having to catch up in the future.
Yeah.
And with Wimberley, I got to be cautious when I speak about Wimberley, because I don't live there.
Sure.
But just I recognize the goals around maintaining that natural aesthetic feel, that small town feel, but at the same time begin to evolve. I went through Wimberley, got lots of friends that lived there I guess it was sometime end of 2025, and when it had pizza at this place in downtown that wasn't there before, and all of a sudden I get there, I'm like, man, well, one, the pizza here is amazing,
Right.
and two, I was like, this place is beautiful. And they're like, yeah, they've really kind of come in and tried to bring in more artisan restaurants. They want it to be much more inviting, very family friendly. I mean, that was one thing that I saw immediately about Wimberley is the giant playground, play area for kids. You could have a slice of really good pizza and a pint of beer if you wanted a beer. And then I walked over to watch a friend of mine that was performing solo guitar player, and so lots of walkability, lots of artisans, very creative, very young mindset, so young families. And so I think for a lot of folks, that's what they're looking for, is environments where it can be family friendly, still have that small town feel, be affordable, be walkable. For San Marcos, that's still something that we're looking to achieve. The hardships that we have in San Marcos is that you have such a diverse community of both university students along with residents there that are looking for similar things, but at the same time, some of those similar things are different. And so it's affordability for sure. It's walkability for sure. It's, hey, I want something that's not going to break the bank, but I'm going to enjoy it, whether that be something to eat, something to drink, something to entertain me. Maybe I'm looking for work, whatever that might be. But it shouldn't just cater to one demographic. And I
Right.
think that's something that is still a bit of a struggle, is a lot of times when businesses and investors are looking to come and invest, they're only looking at the bottom line of the spreadsheet of, okay, well, what's the median household income? What's the available income that, somebody's going to be able to spend on a meal or whatever? And they're not really taking that time to come and say, hey, let me sit with you,
Of course.
let me just come and sit with you and tell me, what is it you want?
Right.
What is it I can bring to you? And I'd love to see more of that for San Marcos. And I know that their economic development groups there, they've made a lot of changes recently to try to improve and bring more. And they've been doing that for 2 or 3 decades now. And certainly it's been good. But, finding more of that family friendly, hey, let's make sure we've got what's going on in Wimberley also available in San Marcos is good. And so that it's not just, chicken strip places, and we got way too many of those, and definitely not just a bunch of
That's really
bars.
funny. Yeah.
And we don't need any more vape shops. That's for sure.
Oh.
Finding that balance again, I think is something important for San Marcos.
Well, and a couple of things you said there really had sprouted some ideas for me. One of them is that it's only been in the past few years that I've really realized how diverse the communities in Central Texas are. If you drive to Elgin, it's very different than if you drive to Manor versus if you drive, to Lockhart, to Luling. All of these places have such distinct identities. And if you look at it just on a map, you're like, oh, what is this? It's another city, whatever. But having spent so much time now in all these different communities, working on economic development with them, it's been a blast. Because and all of these people, especially in city management, a lot of the people who I'm getting to spend time with are super entrepreneurial. They're super community focused, and they've got the resources available to them in some of these smaller cities. May not be huge, but they're utilizing them to the maximum degree that they can. And it's so fun to be around people who are that devoted, and then who are also approachable.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing in Austin that in the city of Austin, it's different, right? There's so many people. It's so big that it's very difficult to interface with some of your electeds or some of your community leaders in the same way because they've risen to such a place, especially even on a national and a global scale in terms of wealth, in terms of how many people they have to oversee. And I think when you look at some of the problems that you were describing about economic growth and about trying to come up with diverse solutions to diverse populations, that's one of the interesting challenges of growing as fast as San Marcos has, right? Because, when you've got that many people to take care of, if you miss out on the needs of a small population, if you just cater to the majority of your city, for example, when you have that many people, if you miss out on, say, 5% of people's needs, that's a lot of people. That's thousands and thousands of people. Whereas, when your city's smaller, it's like, that's one or two complaints coming in, as opposed to you've now got an entire massive group of folks who are now feeling underserved. And so I think it's fascinating. I think it's super challenging, and learning more about those areas. And I think too, that's one of the reasons I value your insight so much is you have intimate knowledge of the way that, there are people who are just focused on Austin. And I think that's,
that's been part of the hardship,
right?
Is especially so. Again, the benefit of being the center, you refer to us as the hub, is great. But with that, you're also dealing with competing media markets, and so San Marcos has a small newspaper, but we have a university radio station. We don't have a news station, and so it's kind of the same for all of those communities in between. And so, for example, when you're in need of information from a news station, whether it's for extreme weather, major events, whether those events are just, social events, or, hey, we need to get this information out so the public knows, you may be getting information from Austin, you may be getting information from San Antonio.
Right.
And if the information that you need in that moment is from Austin and you turn on the television and you're getting San Antonio news, you're out of luck.
Right.
I remember growing up, we had a small radio station, I think it was called KCNY, and that's what you would listen to for information about big storms coming through, if you're listening to the big game. And now, you've got the internet, you've got your phone, but sometimes when you need that immediate and not just uncertainty around the noise that you're going to get in social media or just off of your phone, it's hard to find it. And so that's the same struggle that communities like ours have, is being able to have that consistent means of communication, a central location of communication, because you have so many different avenues of noise that are coming through at the same time. And we're also dealing in an era of information that can be questionable at times.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that's actually a field which I've paid a lot of attention to over the last few years, especially as we become the media partners for cities.
Yeah.
Like in Luling, for example, one of the things that's been so beautiful about their podcast is, they have a small newspaper, things along those lines, but a lot of people don't receive, you can't get all of the information you possibly need to know about stuff like city events, right, from those resources. And so by creating a strong social media presence for the city, where you have community leaders on every week talking about, hey, we've got this community cookout going on, or this chamber event happening, things along those lines, we're able to create this scalable system of distributing local news and local information that the city controls, that's trustworthy, and then also which gets everybody engaged. Because when you disseminate it on a combination of platforms, right, like you get some on Facebook for perhaps an older demographic, but also on TikTok for your high schoolers who normally never get hit with any kind of local news. Just a little insight on that regard. We recently, completed a video with one of their workforce development people, and he's also a teacher at the high school. And it was super cute because you had kids in the comments of the TikToks that said, Mr. Smith. It was just super fun to see that diversity there. So to take this conversation in a little direction,
sure.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your public service.
Sure.
'Cause I feel like your experience there is definitely unique, and definitely there's a lot of value in analyzing that and kind of understanding a bit about it. So one thing that I feel like I know is that your path to public service was not planned. Is that correct?
That is accurate. So I'll do my best to kind of give you an abbreviated story. So I was an upperclassman student at what was then Southwest Texas State University. So this would have been like 98 maybe. I was a student worker in the computing services office, and I had a wonderful mentor who, when I was a freshman, was the officer in the local LULAC council, gave me a scholarship. And when I went to go get my scholarship check, he said, "Hey, do you need a job?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, sure." And he goes, "Fine, show up on Monday, you've got a job." And I worked for him for 5 years. My brother worked for him for 4 years after I did. One day I start getting these phone calls. Thing to understand about me: when I was in college, I was a very actively involved student.
Right. Now that's surprising.
So I was involved in, business organizations. I was involved in science organizations. I was involved in communications organizations. But I was also involved in the community. I like to share with folks that the parents of students that I graduated high school with were on the Chamber of Commerce. They were business owners. They were professors at the university. So, whenever I needed something for an event, an activity, I was going to their businesses. And so fast forward to this particular period of time, I started getting phone calls at the office I was working at. And it was a woman that was running the Chamber of Commerce. It was a guy that was on the city council, just people whose names I was used to seeing in the newspaper. And I was like, this is so cool. And they're like, "Hey, we want you to run for city council." And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I've seen your picture in the paper. This sounds pretty exciting. And so I remember hanging up the phone, and I go over to Richard. My mentor's name was Richard Cruz. And I go over to Richard and I was like, "Hey, man, these people want me to run for city council." And he's like, "Who is it? And give me their names." And so I give him the names. And he goes, "Go back to your desk. I'll come and find you in a few minutes." And so certainly he comes and finds me. He goes, "Those people aren't going to bother you anymore. So you need to focus on your education, getting your degree. And when it's time for you to run for office, I'll tell you." It's like, "Yes, sir." To this day, I had to have been, that was 98. I was like 20, maybe 21 years old. To this date, the greatest bit of advice I had ever received,
Really?
which was sit still. Sit still. I will tell you when the timing is right. So fast forward about 5 years, there's a woman that is on the city council that was planning to run for mayor. She was going to leave a 1-year vacated seat, and she actually approached Richard to run for that office. Richard was a decorated, Vietnam veteran, worked for the university, well known in the community, civic leader, and she approached him. I happened to walk into the room that day because we were having a meeting later that evening or whatever, and I didn't interrupt the meeting. I just saw, waved from a distance, went and sat in the corner, and then Richard walks over to me, and I was like, "What was that all about?" And he goes, "Remember that conversation we had a few years ago? And I told you I'd tell you when it's time for you to run for city council?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's time." I was like, whoa. Keep in mind, Aidan, I think at this point I was 26 years old.
Yeah.
I had been out of college now for 4 years, 2004. I was still young and probably had, a few $1,000s in my savings account, nothing major. And knew nothing about running for public office, knew nothing about public office at all. I mean, the most involved I'd been was completing my census and voting an election. That was it. And the only thing I really knew that my family and I knew about running for office is that, well, if you're going to run for office, you better know how to sell some barbecue plates. And so we knew we needed to make signs, and we knew we wanted to make T-shirts. And so barbecue it was. And I guess we sold enough barbecue plates, and I went and knocked on enough doors, and we put up enough signs and won my first election by 51 votes and served for 1 year on the city council in that vacated seat. And then the following year, ran uncontested, and so ran for another 3 years. And then decided, hey, I've had my time, and I kind of stepped away. And then about 2 years after that, started getting a couple of knocks on the door. "Hey, we really miss your voice, and we think you should come back." And no, I'm good. And then a few more folks would be like, "Hey, Daniel, it's been a while since you've been on city council. We'd like to have you back." And I was like, "No, I think I'm good. Y'all keep going." And then finally, my dad was the one that said, "Well, what is it that you're worried about?" I was like, "Well, what do I lose?" And he goes, what does it matter?" He goes, "You still have your health. You still have your education. We still love you. That's not going to change." But then my father said, "But if you're going to do this, if you're going to run for office again, go for the top seat." I was like, okay. And so that's what we did. And again, this time we knew how to make barbecue. And so ran again for my first time as running for mayor, won again by 51 votes against a friend of mine.
Oh, how was that?
It was a good experience, I think, for both of us. We did our best to kind of keep things. I mean, I'm sure others will say we didn't, but I mean, we did our best to kind of keep it clean. He and I are still friends. I don't see him as frequently as I would like to, but we served together I served as mayor for 6 years. He served as a council member of mine, I think for about 5 years. He served as mayor after me. And so, it was a good experience. I enjoyed it. But yeah, unplanned. I mean, I get folks that ask me all the time, oh, did you know back when you were in 6th grade that one of these days you're going to, I'm going to run for mayor and clean up the city? Like, no, that was never the intent. I mean, I always thought, growing up, I was going to be 7 feet tall and play for the San Antonio Spurs. And that didn't work out so great.
What do you mean? You're 7 foot tall?
Well, yeah, no.
Give or take a few feet.
Give or take a few feet for sure.
Well, I think that story is inspiring in a lot of ways. And one of the things that I feel like patience is a very misunderstood virtue, because oftentimes it bleeds into things that are not nearly as virtuous, right? So if a lot of people disguise procrastination as patience sometimes. You're like, oh, indecision, right? Like, I don't know if I want to do it. But truly being patient and preparing yourself is really important, especially doing things at the correct time.
Yeah.
I also think it's wonderful. One thing I think any young person could take away from that story is the power of having the right friends, the right supporters. You know what I mean? Surrounding yourself with people who are active in the community, people who are working hard to get stuff done. Your mentor, but also, your mentor is a friend, just people around you who you like and who you'd have lunch with or you'd have drink a coffee with. I think living your life in that regard is oftentimes the best way. Just being around people who lift you up and who search out for opportunities for you. I feel like not everybody, a lot of people would say that that's not what they have in their life.
Yeah.
But I think it's a skill. A question for you.
Sure.
I know you have a lot of pretty awesome people you surround yourself with. What is it that you do that makes people want to be friends with you?
Ooh, Aidan. You're getting me emotional here, man. I don't know if there's anything in particular that I do. I will say this. You've referred to this as being a skill. And I would counter that a little bit. I'd say it's more of a blessing. I had a conversation with my aunt recently. When I say recently, probably in the last 4 or 5 months. She had a similar question as you did at the very beginning of our conversation about, well, tell me, what is it that you actually do? And so then I said, well, this is what I do. My boss says that I connect the dots. My mom says that I'm a matchmaker. My Aunt Susie, growing up, she worked at a pre-K school called Alphabet Village, and it's also in San Marcos. It was in San Marcos, on kind of the north side of town, just north of the university, North LBJ. That's where it was. And she would take me along. In fact, I was obviously enrolled there at Alphabet Village, where I've made the majority of my best friends. I mean, we're there to this day. I'm still close friends with 2 of the kids that I met there. And she told me recently, and I didn't know this, and as I'm describing what I do for work, bringing people together, Dr. Don Christian says I have the gift of congregation. And
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Please continue.
Yeah, no, but he says Don Christian says I have the gift of congregation. And so I was describing that to her. And she says, when you were a kid, she's saying 2, 3, 4 years old, she goes, whenever a new child was enrolled at Alphabet Village, Johanna Hansen, who was the director at the time, or the founder director of Alphabet Village, she would always ask my aunt, she said, hey, bring Daniel so he can meet the new child. And so I would kind of serve as that intro person to kind of warm them up, get them comfortable, kind of soften the ground, if you will, because I came with no judgment. no expectations that needed to be met. I'm simply that I guess at the time, big eyes and big smile that was going to welcome that person, that child, and just kind of introduce them to everyone else, and to do it gradually rather than, hey, you're welcome to the club. But I didn't know that. So she had to remind me of it. And she goes, oh, yeah. She goes, Johanna was very specific. She would ask for you, and you would be the one that met them at the door and showed them where to put their coat and showed them where, the little lunchroom was, and you'd walk them over to where the toy room was, and then you'd walk them over and introduce them to folks, and that was your role. So to ask, what is my skill set? I remember, what is it that I do? Why do people come to me? I think it's just something God's blessed me with, to be able to pinpoint and say, oh, Aidan, these are the things that I do, and for $9.95 you can do it too. I just don't know what those would be, man. I think what I share with my students all the time is be genuine, be yourself. Don't try to be something other than, because it's really hard to find yourself if you spend too much time trying to be someone else. The other thing I share with my students, because I teach in Concordia University, and I'm planning to teach some classes at our alma mater, St. Edward's, later this fall, with our good friend Tom Seacrest. But what I also share with my students is to share your story, and that it's your story, your narrative, those aspects of life that we get to curate over time that are really most powerful. Because what I share with someone else, they carry with them into other rooms in which I may not be. And there may be a moment in which something is stimulated or sparked within a conversation where somebody says, who you need to talk to? You need to talk to Aidan Evans. That's the person you need to talk to regarding this project. Or, I need to make sure you... And I think doing that, not with the expectation of some type of compensation, but just with the expectation of, hey, I'm doing this because it's good for that person, really helps others feel like, hey, yeah, I want to share more. I don't just want to share more with Daniel because he goes and shares with others that helps me. I want to share more with others because that multiplies, throughout others. And maybe the more confidence I find in myself to share more of my story will encourage others to share more of their story. And so I hope that answers the question of what is it that draws people to you. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you for certain. I think it's different for everybody.
One of the things that I really take away from that is, even though it may not be as practiced as dribbling a basketball, for example, it's still something, you're really good at it.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of it.
Well, I've done a lot more of that than I ever will have said dribbling a basketball, because that whole San Antonio Spurs thing was short-lived.
Right. Well, but, I would say if I was to look at your ability to socialize and to connect with people, I would think there are two main characteristics. One of it is a genuine, natural interest in folks.
Yeah.
That's the part, I think, where you say, gracias por Dios. You know what I
Ooh,
mean? So it's like, that's all you
you
got, because that's just a blessing, you know what
Absolutely.
I mean? But to take that blessing and then to exercise it with regularity, when at times in life we can be drawn away from that path, you know what I mean? There's a degree of mental fortitude, that you have to, because there are times where we want to isolate ourselves or whatever.
Yeah.
So I would say I want to, I'll barter with you, and I'll say we can give you half credit. So we can say that, some amount of it is natural, but also it's a choice, and oftentimes it's representative of a consistency of, taking care of yourself and putting yourself in a position where you can connect with people that allows you to exercise what is your true skill.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and it's, to a degree, it's planning as well, because you set yourself up with a place in life where you have the opportunity to use what you feel like you're truly good at on a day-to-day basis.
I will add this, and I think you have a question a little later that I was kind of saving, but I know I am here for a reason. Certainly here meeting with you for a reason, but I know God has blessed me with the time that I've had on earth for a reason. And to this day, I don't know what that reason is, but each and every day I will continue to be of service in pursuit of that purpose. And I think a part of that, also means building relationships, connecting with people, advocating for causes. That service element has been a part of me from the very beginning.
Well, one thing I know about you too, like in your life, you've overcome serious hardships and, illness, things along those lines. Yeah. How has that affected you and contributed to that mindset?
Significantly. So it depends on how you want me to respond to that. I mean, is there something specific that you're wanting me to get into, or do you want me to just kind of jump into this conversation around a hardship in general?
My question for you is like, what are some of the, from what you've overcome and the things you've experienced? I mean, one thing which we've talked about before is that you are a cancer survivor.
Yes.
That's one example. I would say whatever you feel like, you're most naturally called to talk about is what I'd like to hear from you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting to get into this particular question at this point in the conversation, because a lot of times I start my conversations with this, with this focal point. And it's because, okay, so let me just jump into it. So I am now I'm going to be 49 on Sunday.
I thought you're 27.
Oh, thank you very much. And so I will be a 44-year cancer survivor this coming April. Had cancer when I was 5 years old, spring of 1982. Started out as a really bad kidney infection, progressed, and then I ended up seeing a kidney specialist for a short period in New Braunfels. My very last appointment with my kidney specialist, my mom takes me in. I was really excited about this. I tell this story a lot. So I was really excited for this because Mom had said, hey, we get out of this, we're going to take you to Kmart. And you're going to get yourself a Darth Vader's action figure.
Oh.
And a Happy Meal.
Come on.
Oh, yeah. So go to the appointment. Doctor's doing an exam. And my mom says, hey, sorry, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I didn't really see you feel around his stomach, and you typically feel around his stomach. Oh, let me get in there too. He does that, and he steps out of the room, brings his nurse in. She does it. They both step out of the room. They bring another doctor in, feels around. Now my mom's panicking. She's like, okay, what did I start? Nurse comes in. She's like, hey, Miss Guerrero, look, you need to take him to Santa Rosa Children's Hospital in San Antonio right now. Your husband's going to meet you there. Don't go home. Don't stop at McDonald's. Go directly to her. So I'm like, oh, missed out on my Darth Vader. So get to the hospital. A couple of days later, they remove the largest malignant, non-spreading tumor from a child my age at that time. Spent 45 days in the hospital. Went through chemotherapy. Went through my recovery, whatnot. But a big part of it is that whole experience is what has shaped who I am today. Seeing a community kind of rally around my family, witnessing fundraising, witnessing a tremendous amount of prayer. My parents at the time were in their late 20s. Yeah. And so to kind of witness the sacrifice they went through, the fear they experienced. I mean, a lot of those memories have since faded from my mind, but what I have never forgotten is just this overwhelming feeling of love, this overwhelming feeling of faith, and knowing that at any point in that experience and since that experience, I could have been taken. And so I feel blessed to be here. Because of that, I've gotten very involved with different youth-oriented cancer experiences, the Sunshine Kids, Discovery Camps. Those are big organizations that I try to be a part of. Any opportunity I have to be involved or to share my story or to advocate for cancer research, I try to take that on. But it's also been kind of that reminder that life is short and precious. And so I know I'm here for a purpose, whether that purpose be advocacy of youth cancer, whether that purpose be, civic leadership, education, tortoises. I don't know.
Scuba
diving, barbecue. But nonetheless, I feel like it's the responsibility that I have as a Christian to just continue to do good works, to be a positive example, and to welcome others. And so in the conversations that we've had, I mean, I feel like that's what has contributed to who I am. It's also reminded me that when times are hard, those moments of hardship are temporary, and that there are other families, other communities that are going through much harder circumstances. And so to kind of keep things in perspective and to keep moving forward. And so right now, my family's dealing with some pretty extreme health issues with my mom. And so just kind of try to continue those same practices of faith, family, love, support. And we've seen tremendous progress. And so, I mean, this past week, my mom, who hadn't been able to speak in well over a month, I was lying down in her hospital room on a cot, and at 5 a.m, I hear this voice, really whispered, but it was very assertive, say, "Daniela." And I was like, "Whoa, what was that?" And I get up out of bed and I crawl over to my mom's hospital bed, and there she is staring at me. And I was like, "Mom?" And she goes, "Get me out of this bed." And I was like, "Whoa, slow down, Mom. Let me tell you what's going on here." But it's just this reminder that when you have faith, when you have family, when you never give up hope, when you know that there's purpose behind the pain, that good things come. And so I've been through cancer, I've been through floods, I've been through public criticism and circumstances of that nature. But at the end of the day, I'm still here. And I'm able to serve, and I'm able to smile, and I'm able to bring people together. And I think that's what gives me hope.
Yeah. Well, so on that note, you talk about the things that make you excited to wake up in the morning, and the kind of servant leadership which you represent. What projects are you working on these days which are allowing you to exercise those energies?
Well, I'm working with a group right now called Upward Communities, and focused on building housing communities. Some might refer them to as workforce housing. We refer to them as essential housing.
Right.
And our focus really has been on building entire communities for public teachers, for public school teachers. And so working right now with Hayes CISD, Lockhart ISD, in initial conversations with other Central Texas school districts to build single-family homes specifically for employees of public school districts, and using that as employee benefits. In other words, hey, if you work for Hayes School District or Lockhart School District, you could potentially live in one of these homes, and it's at a significantly reduced rental rate with amenities. We're working on another project right now where we're looking at building an entire community that's entirely ADA compliant. So not just the homes, the entire community. So all walkable, all sidewalks ADA compliant. And, I was talking to my girlfriend about it earlier today, and it was kind of the sense that that's beautiful, because a lot of times she's an occupational therapist, and she says, you'll have a residence that's ADA compliant, that's accessible, but then that resident goes somewhere else, goes to their neighbor's house, and they don't have the same access. So to have an entire community where your neighbor, if they just happen to be mobilely challenged or in a wheelchair, can still go to their neighbor's house and not worry about being able to maneuver either in or out or around their home. She's like, that's beautiful. And so that's something that we're working on right now as well, actually in San Marcos. And so, it's a beautiful organization and program to be a part of. It's still growing. And so we're still finding areas where it's like, hey, we need to understand this a little bit better. We need to ask more questions. We need to figure things out. And so being a part of something at the ground level it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because we get to think a little bit more creatively.
Yeah, that leaves me with a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
One of the initial ones is, how did this organization get started?
I can share a little bit of that. I don't really think I can get into too many details of it.
Of course.
It started out, the founder witnessed a couple of different things. One, he's a builder, developer, investor, noticed a couple of things. One was that one of his children had 3 or 4 different teachers in 1 year.
Wow.
And it's like, hey, how do you maintain consistency of instruction if your instructor is constantly changing over? It's difficult to build relationships and trust when you don't have that same voice, that same relationship. And so that was one thing that he was witnessing. And one of the key variables is that that person wasn't able to live within the district or couldn't afford housing within the district. So it's like, well, what can I do to change that? Well, because I can't raise your salary, but I can probably build you a home that you could actually afford and that you would want to live in. And so he's taken that approach. The other thing is that he was, he was building a community and in a adjacent community here. I won't say where, but he was building a community, and the city manager of that particular community said, "Hey, what would it take for me to buy the entire or to lease the entire neighborhood?" He's like, "Why would you do that?" And he goes, "Man, I'm constantly having to replace different people that work for the city because I can't afford them. 3 or 4 of my police officers live, an hour and a half away. Some of my other people live, too far. And the moment that they find a job that's closer to home or somebody offers them an extra $2, they're gone.
Right.
But if I had a home that I could offer them, that might be a greater incentive." And so he sat with that for a period and got a team of people together and said, "Hey, is this really an issue? Because I've now seen not only a municipal leader come and say, 'Hey, I'm struggling to keep my people,' but I'm now hearing from my own child's school struggling to be able to keep somebody at the front of the classroom. What's going on here? And do we have the resources and capacity to try to resolve this problem?" And lo and behold, enough time, enough people, enough questions were asked. We're like, "Hey, we think we have a solution." And it's turned into enough of a solution where at least, hey, CISD has said, we want to, get in on this to the tune of 1,000 homes.
Wow.
And Lockhart said, hey, we want in on this to the tune of about 120 homes. And now we're looking at other school districts in the Central Texas area. There's school districts in Florida that have already said, hey, we want to do this to the tune of 1,200 homes. We're talking to folks in Tennessee and other parts of the country. And so, it's definitely, it's no big surprise housing affordability and accessibility. It's not like it's a new issue, but the solution that Upward Communities is trying to bring forward is something that's very exciting, and it's a blessing to be a part of it.
I guess one of the questions that comes immediately to mind is like, why have we not heard more about this? And I guess one of the reasons might be that it's so new.
It's still new. We're probably a few weeks away from execution on our first few leases.
Oh, wow.
And then probably a few weeks or maybe a month or so away from actually being able to break ground. And so it's going to move quick. But, when you're dealing with something that's new, it also takes a while for folks to kind of become comfortable with being early adopters. And so I would definitely say Lockhart ISD, Hayes CISD, have said, oh no, we want to be trendsetters. We want to be trailblazers. We want to be part of the folks that get into the mess and, work towards those solutions and count on us to help get through this. And we know it can be a struggle and a challenge, but we're in. And I think once we kind of finally get to, lease execution, groundbreaking, putting up that first home, the next 1,000 homes aren't going to be that far behind.
Right.
And, the school districts that have already accepted our calls and said, hey, yeah, we really want to talk, we're going to be moving fast.
Yeah. Well, there are 2 thoughts that immediately came to mind from there. The first one is, if I work for one of those school districts who is working hard and pushing to be one of the first communities in this country to adapt this innovative program, imagine what that says to me as a teacher, right? I'm like, holy crap, the people who I'm working with really care about me. They're pushing to provide, innovative solutions, which of course it's difficult to innovate. And I think that must mean so much to the community in that regard. Secondarily, just for anybody who would be interested in learning more, whether they're, on the administrative end or whether they're interested in leasing one of these homes, what would be a good way for them to find more information about Upward Communities?
Upwardcommunities.com.
Wow.
Upwardcommunities.com would be the best place to go. Lots of good information there. I'm sure we'll be updating it even more with videos and pictures as we progress in some of these initial communities that are going up.
Wow. Well, and I think it's really exciting to me too, learning a little bit more about the different ways that you've continued to be a part of
Yeah.
super positive and innovative causes in all
Appreciate that.
kinds of looks. And one thing too is it's inspiring. It's like, hey, no matter what time of life you're in, no matter if you're in you've got time spent in the nonprofit sector, you've got
Yeah.
time spent in literal public office, and
Yeah.
now in the private sector, there are just as many chances to be innovative and do good as anything else. And I think that's something that can be easy to forget, especially in the world of, there are a lot of times where, we see corporations doing things. We're like, I'm not sure that's super positive. But fundamentally, one of the things that, as a business owner that I feel like is really important is like businesses are designed to solve problems. And local businesses, if your company focuses on really helping people and solving people's problems, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is a message that doesn't get out enough. People
Yeah.
don't realize that fundamentally, if you do a lot of good in the world, value finds a way back to you.
Yeah.
And that happens on a philosophical level. It happens and an emotional level with how people treat you and how you relate to others. But it also happens, even onto a financial level. If you're somebody who can, do an amazing job working for those around you and supporting people and making their lives easier, you're going to be rewarded in all aspects of life. And I think that that's kind of one of the takeaways I have from your story is, you're a servant leader. You've worked to support all these people. You've been in prestigious roles, but fundamentally in those roles, your job has been, how do I lift everybody else up? And at the end of the day, I feel a positivity and an energy about you that I think is almost prescriptive. It's like, okay, that's how I should aim to operate with this degree of contentment and self-support, which I think is really, I've had plenty of times in my life where I was antagonistic to myself in that way. And that's, from my own candid perspective, that's been one of the big motivators is, all right, when I was younger was how did I wake up every day and not feel negatively about myself? And so I think to me, work has been the answer. It's like if I can get really good at my work, if I can make my work helping people and, spending time with people I like, shout out Declan and Taha, no comment on who those people are. That's the kind of stuff that really is the essence of life for me. Well, so obviously, so you've thank you for sharing some of the ways about Upward and just some of the ways people can get involved there. As we kind of wind down this conversation, a question I have for you is for anybody who is interested in becoming more involved in their community and who is motivated by this and like, I want to learn more about how I can, get integrated anywhere in Central Texas or even, on a national or global scale. What would your advice to them be if they're, trying to find their first step into supporting their community but may not know how yet?
I get this question regularly, and the answer is really simple. The solution or the eventual action may not be simple, but it's volunteer. And it really doesn't matter how or when or where for whom you volunteer, but get out and be of service, kind of that sense of selfless service without expectation, not seeking. It can't be something where, I want to do this because I want it to look good on my resume.
Right.
Or I want to do this because I need to get something back. I joked earlier about, I was growing up being in college, all of my friends' parents were business owners, blah, blah, blah. And so I was heavily involved. Well, that was what I was really doing is I was volunteering. I was volunteering with the Chamber of Commerce, with the library, with the animal shelter, with all sorts of different groups. And it wasn't it was rarely political. A lot of times, frankly, I was volunteering because there was something I was getting in return. It was usually free pizza and free beer. But that sense of volunteerism just became infectious. I wanted to kind of be useful, and I felt in being useful, I was also picking up either a skill or I was picking up a relationship or I was just learning something along the way. And so, volunteering at your local library, volunteering at your local animal shelter, your local food bank with Meals on Wheels, volunteering with a census. I did that when I was really young too. I remember actually volunteering and assisting, not with doing or taking the census, but promoting the census. And so I did that when I was in middle school. And so I encourage that of folks that are kind of like, hey, I want to get involved in my community. I want to learn more. And then if you're more politically inclined, find a candidate that you're just like, hey, I really would like to, work on behalf of. Now, what I do with a lot of folks that approach me and say, hey, I want to get involved in politics, I encourage them to do two things. I encourage them to volunteer and work for a candidate that they support. And I also encourage them to volunteer and campaign for a candidate that they typically would not have supported. And so it's like you got to see both sides. I mean, you got to also recognize that it's not really two sides. There is a broad spectrum of perspectives in any race or in any political dynamic. And so trying to make things kind of red and blue or black and white, if you will, can create more hardship than anything. So seeing from multiple perspectives, literally walking in other people's shoes, I think is incredibly helpful in understanding how to resolve problems. Because sometimes it's not necessarily the resolution of the problem as much as it is understanding the problem. And so that's something that I've encouraged folks that if they're interested in getting involved in politics. The other thing is this, I've had plenty of friends that, I need to run for office. I need to do this. I need to do that. I was like, sometimes it's not about being the person on the ballot. Many times it's about being a staffer or working in government, being that bureaucrat. And so I've had a lot of friends that have gone into more diplomatic, bureaucratic roles that have turned into careers. I've had several friends that have done that. One of my best friends, shortly after 9/11, literally jumped into his pickup truck, drove to Washington, D.C., found an internship, turned it into a career. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think motivate different young people. In some cases, it's been monumental events like 9/11. Our hope is that we never have to go through something similar.
God willing.
But if that's what motivates you, it's like, hey, I saw this happen in front of me, and I want to be a part of change, then, go make it happen.
Right. Whatever,
Be the change you want to see in the world.
I like that. The other thing which I also really take away from that is be useful. Just be useful.
Yeah.
And I think it's been my secret sauce my whole life.
Yeah.
I realized very quickly, no matter what my degree said, I didn't know a damn thing about a damn thing. And so I was only going to learn how to be useful by working for free, working as often as you can.
Yeah.
And you get smarter. Daniel, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a pleasure.
I really enjoyed it.
Enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.